A fourth stimulus check may look like this, especially right now with all of the increased talk and information as of recently. I have all the details for you in this video. Let's get into it right now. But if you're new here or if you haven't done so yet, make sure to subscribe by hitting that button right down below the video. It's totally free to do so, and so I can keep you updated during this very busy time as information continues to change very, very rapidly. I'm doing all the research and I'm breaking it all down into these short videos so that you can get the latest details hot off the wire each and every day as this information is being released. So again, thanks so much for joining me. Make sure to subscribe down below, and please remember, my dedication is to be here for you each and every day, right by your side, to help you out in any way that I can during this very busy and confusing time. All right, thanks again. Let's jump right into the video. All right, so I do want to talk about this in a little bit more detail here because the landscape has changed pretty substantially over the last week or so. I want to talk about what has been discussed as well as what a fourth stimulus check may actually look like for the low income and the fixed income. Now, why do I point out those groups in particular? Simply because this is what they've exactly talked about in their proposals, in their ideas, and all of these other announcements going on out there right now. In the event of a fourth stimulus check, we already know it is highly going to be focused on the low income and the fixed income, which is actually really, really cool because I do know that a lot of you here in the community are low income or you're living on a fixed income from benefits including Social Security, retirement, SSDI, survivors, SSI, VA, RRB, or like I said, maybe you're low income or even no income. So in the event of a fourth stimulus check, hey, this is actually looking kind of good for you. So I do want to talk through the details as far as everything that's going on lately and what a fourth stimulus check may actually look like. Now again, remember, over the last couple years here, the previous 3 checks that we received were technically called economic impact payments. In other words, they were stimulus checks, which is what we've been calling them, but the formal name behind them was EIP, economic impact payment. However, as we go forward here, we need to continue watching everything very, very closely because we're actually in a very different situation. Now, over the last couple years here, the checks that were distributed were those economic impact payments. In other words, to stimulate the economy. However, do we need an economy to be stimulated right now? Well, depends on who you ask, but the economy is in a much different situation today than what it was over the last 2 years, or especially in early 2020, late 2020, and early 2021. The economy is in a very different place today. However, as we mentioned, stimulus checks, that may indicate what kind of payments we need going forward. Do we need economic impact payments? Well, again, probably not. We probably don't need economic impact payments. But at this point, we probably need something more along the lines of an anti-inflationary check, a relief check, a survival check, some type of inflationary check, something like this along these lines. So again, I do want to point this out simply because some of the announcements that we've heard out of Congress, as well as economists and other high-profile people out there right now, are exactly pointing to exactly that. They are no longer calling them stimulus checks, but rather they're calling them direct checks. Have you noticed that here? Over the last couple, or maybe like the last week or so, maybe week and a half or so, we've seen these proposals coming out. We've seen a lot of talk out of high-profile people, again, people out of Congress, all these people coming out right now with all of these introductions and proposals. And again, a lot of times they're being called direct checks. But with that being said, I do want to bring a few other things to your attention here going forward. So first off, we do know that as of right now, probably over the last, week and a half or so now, I'm going to say there's probably been maybe 6, 7, possibly even 8 different proposals that I've seen come out here just in the last, I'm going to call it probably 7 or 8, maybe 9 days or so. We've seen about, 6, 7, 8 of these different proposals coming out. Now, all of these proposals are basically called something different, and they're coming out as many different things here. So number 1, we've seen direct checks being announced. That's a good thing. We want direct checks, right? Direct checks are literally the same thing as a stimulus check. Money into your bank account that you can use however you see fit, right? You could go out and buy clothes with it. You could buy food with it. You could save it. You could do whatever you want with it. You could buy dog food, cat food. You could buy a new phone. Whatever. It does not matter. My point is, a direct check is literally just cash in your bank account, and you can just spend it however you see fit. Now, we've also seen other things coming out as well, in the form of vouchers, right? Vouchers for gas. We've seen a number of these coming up as well. So this would not necessarily be cash in your bank account, but rather it would be a voucher same as cash. Have you ever heard that statement before? Same as cash. Well, that's literally what these vouchers would be. Now, a lot of times that these vouchers that have been introduced as of recently would be a gas voucher. So a gas voucher being you can go out and use it for gas. But what about somebody who maybe doesn't drive? Or maybe who's somebody who maybe drives very minimally with everything going on? Or maybe you get the voucher and you think, I don't need this much of a voucher. What can I do with it? Well, there has been talk also that you may be able to take the voucher and at some point in the future redeem it for cash. Well, that'd be kind of a cool thing too. But the major downfall behind that would be, if I have a voucher, okay, I don't really want or need the voucher. I could maybe trade it with a family member or a friend or maybe some stranger at the gas station. I could say, hey, I got a voucher. You want to trade me for something? You know what I mean? So that would be something, again, I'm not advocating for that. I'm not saying that you should do that. I'm just simply saying that could be something that I'd imagine a lot of people would be doing in the event of a voucher. Or, like I said, the word on the street out there, and there's been a lot of talk about this, is that these vouchers may actually be redeemable at some point in the future for cash. Now, here's what I can say. I did not see any specified time frame for when these vouchers may be redeemed for cash, but again, that could be an option going forward. So the worst thing about that is that if you don't use the voucher, you would actually have to hold on to this thing and feel like, okay, at some point in the future, this may have a cash value. Well, when is the future going to be? Because we need the cash right now. So I don't really love holding on to things and thinking, okay, someday in the future, this will be worth something. Well, I think we need the money now, not like in 6 months from now or whatever they would determine. So that'd be another thing out there as well. Something else I want to point out. There are, in some locations around the country right now, there are these cards that you could get as a gas voucher. Again, same thing like a voucher that'd be sent to you from maybe something that Congress was doing on a federal level out to every state. Otherwise, there are certain states, different cities and locations within different states around the country right now that are offering these vouchers as well. Same thing, literally, it's like a gift card, but they're calling it a voucher where you basically just get the money and again, you can use it for gas. Okay, so these are a few things that have been introduced out there as well. However, let's quickly talk about what's going on the state level as well, because we need to point this out because realistically, on the state level, it's essentially a stimulus check, but again, they're calling it all kinds of different things. First off, in the state of California, again, I'm just using California as an example. I'm going to use a few different states here as examples, but there are multiple different states out there right now that are doing very similar things. But again, I'm using California just as an example. Just the other day, they introduced a tax rebate in the form of $400. So essentially what it would be is a $400 check that they would send to you, again, a stimulus check, but rather they're calling it a tax rebate. Remember, a tax rebate is the same thing as a check because they're basically just letting you know that, hey, you can claim this, and then there you go, you're getting $400. So that is California. Now, in the state of Minnesota, they're doing something called a Walz check or Waltz check, something like that. Apparently that's the name of the governor, and basically they're calling it a Walz check or whatever. So basically, again, my point is, it's a stimulus check. That's all that they're doing it. They're giving it some fancy, fun name so that they can give credit to, the guy behind it or whatever. So that's the deal behind all this stuff. So these are a couple different examples, but around the country right now, there are multiple different states that are introducing a lot of different things right now. Stimulus checks, direct checks, tax rebates, tax credits, wall checks, or whatever they're called, Walz checks, things like this. So this is not something that is uncommon. We've heard this many times before, but I want you to be very aware. All of this is in relation to a direct check, a stimulus check. That's basically what it all comes down to. Now, when it comes to the federal government, this is where we really need to keep our eyes peeled, and this is where we want to watch everything very, very closely, because ultimately, they have the power and the ability to impact everybody across the entire country, rather than just within the borders of each individual state, and all of the states coming up with their own programs and their own stimulus programs or stimulus checks, things like that. So there could be the introduction of basically anything out of Congress right now, considering that they have introduced so many different things here over the last week or so. I would say that this is actually a really good thing. This is a good, this is like a really big win when it comes to the low income and fixed income going forward, because with all of these introductions that we've seen as of recently, we're doing a few things here. First off, we're desensitizing Congress to the idea, once again, of checks going out to the people. That's a good thing. We want to desensitize them to the idea of this going out simply because if they become comfortable with it again, you know what we probably are going to get. If they become comfortable playing around with the ideas of talking about direct checks or stimulus checks for the American people, that is a really good thing because it's been a very long time since they've talked about anything substantial like this previously. It's been about a year or so since the last time we've heard anything substantial like this. So that's good. Now, at the same time, we want them to continue playing around with these ideas because the more that they play with it, the higher the numbers get. We've seen this before. The more that they continue talking about checks, things like this, usually the higher the amount actually gets because you get one person, like Nancy Pelosi, for example, yesterday. Let me give you a quick example. Yesterday, I talked about it in one of the videos from yesterday afternoon. I said Nancy Pelosi came out and originally they wanted $22.5 billion of COVID relief in the last spending bill that was signed into law actually just on Tuesday of this week. It was passed through Congress last week. Originally, they wanted $22.5 billion in there. Well, Nancy Pelosi came out yesterday and said they need to double it to $45 billion. That's one perfect example of when they start playing around with big numbers. They, out of nowhere, literally, Nancy Pelosi, out of thin air, turned $22.5 billion, which actually was shaved down to $15.6 billion. She turned it into thin air, out of thin air, into $45 billion. So my point is, the more that they play around with this stuff, the more the numbers get enlarged. So that's a good thing when it comes to us and any potential type of stimulus check or direct check or anything like this going forward. Good stuff out there right now, right? So, also, as Congress continues to talk about all of this, they continue to play around with all these ideas. Again, we want to encourage Congress to continue playing with ideas. This is a good thing. They're talking about vouchers, they're talking about cards, they're talking about direct checks, they're talking about anti-inflationary checks. I mean, they're talking about all kinds of different things. This is a good thing. The more that they play around with this stuff, the more creative that they're going to get and the more ideas that they're going to have as far as how they can get money out to the people. We want to encourage this type of behavior because as Congress continues to play around with these ideas, they may come up with one idea called a direct check, or let's just say a stimulus check, or whatever they happen to call it. Doesn't really matter. They may come up with that idea, but at the same time, through playing with these ideas, they may come up with a completely different program as well, like we've heard about over the last couple months here, possibly the adoption of adult checks. Remember, adult tax credit checks? Yeah, that's just another one of these things that they've played around with, and ultimately, it was one of these great ideas that came up out of nowhere. So again, another thing, we want to encourage this type of behavior. So the moral of the story is, Congress is playing around with a lot of different things right now. It's a good thing. It's a good sign going forward. So again, all we need to really do here is continue watching Congress very, very closely. But don't worry, you don't need to do that. I will do that for you. That's why I've said before, my dedication is to do all the research for you and to help you out in any way that I can and to break it down into these short videos. But I would say, considering everything that's been considered lately, what's been introduced, what's been played around with, the ideas, the vouchers, the checks, all the different things on the state level, on the federal level, all of it coming together, I would say happens to be a pretty big win when it comes to the low income and fixed income. Now, of course, we have to be very clear about this and say nothing has been approved yet, but we do know that Congress is working on all this, and yesterday alone, a list of 55 executive orders were presented to the president from the Progressive Caucus that they want to get done here within the next couple months. Well, maybe we throw a stimulus check or direct check or an anti-inflationary check onto the list of executive orders. That sure would be pretty nice too, right? So, as long as they're getting things done here, why not throw one of those onto the list of things that the president needs to do? So, anyway, a lot of different moving parts here, as you can see, with everything going on. But either way, we've got to watch all of this very closely, as I always do. So don't worry, I'll continue to keep track of all this for you, and I'll break it all down into these short videos. So if you haven't done so yet, make sure to subscribe down below, as I will continue watching it and bringing it to you every single day as this information is hitting the wire. I'm watching multiple different sources every single day. That's why I can find all this stuff and bring it to you as quickly as I do. So again, make sure to subscribe down below so you don't miss any updates going forward. Of course, I'll be here for you, right by your side. So feel free to share this video with your friends, family, social media, and go back and check out any of the other over 2,200 videos right here on the channel. Enjoy your day. I hope this one helps you out, and we've got to be aware of all of these different terms that may be thrown around by Congress, because they may slip something out there that may have slipped by our little radar, thinking that we were watching for a stimulus check. Meanwhile, they've introduced called an inflationary check or an anti-inflationary check or a direct check, something like that. So anyway, we've got to keep a wide net here and watch very closely. So anyway, I'll do that for you. Enjoy your day. Thanks again for watching this. Subscribe down below, and I'll catch you again later in the next video.